Here's a highlight from a recent episode of Booked on Rock. Legendary music promoter and longtime VP of Columbia Records, Paul Rappaport. Tell me about the Pink Floyd Airship. Biggest rock marketing event in history, you say in the book.
Yes. Well,
1994.
Yeah. When I do big events, I like to take a page out of a band's music or their live show so that there's an authenticity to it, so that it makes sense for a fan to, I'm going to do a big event. It's going to be like, look here. But it needs to be attached in an authentic way to the band. Early on in the book, you read about the Blue Oyster Cult and the laser beam shot. Because they were getting into laser technology, they were one of the first bands to use that in their production. So that made sense. When it comes to Pink Floyd, they were very famous for their inflatables. Anybody who ever saw the Animals tour or subsequent tours, they had a giant pig that would float across the stadium. They're famous for inflatables. They're famous for bigger than life. For the wall, they had the marionettes. I mean, you're talking floor to ceiling, giant puppets. And this is what they're known for. In 1994, I knew that they would make a great album and I knew that they would do a successful tour. But at this time now, I'm out of promotion. I'm now doing a marketing department for Columbia, sort of a creative marketing department. And part of it are these big events. So I'm thinking, okay, it's 1994. There's a lot of young people that probably could be new fans, for Pink Floyd, right? How do we get these people involved? How do we get them to know what a Pink Floyd is? Also, I knew they're going to sell a lot of music, but when you get to this, what is beyond superstardom? Super duper stardom. I wanted something Beatlesque. When the Beatles came to town, everybody knew they were in town. Your grandmother knew the Beatles were in town. I mean, she knew what a Beatle was. She may not know the music, but you couldn't escape it. And so for Pink Floyd, I was like, okay, that's what I want. I want something so big and so amazing that a whole city knows that Pink Floyd has an album and a tour. And I was sitting on the 14th floor of, or maybe it was 26, I can't remember what floor it was, but high above Manhattan. And I look out my window, I'm looking over the Hudson River, and I see the Budweiser blimp. It's huge. When blimps after they become so big, they call them airships. And there's this giant floating, beautiful object. Maybe it's 1,000 feet over the Hudson, and it's just cruising. And I'm like, oh my God, we need one of those. And I thought it would be a pig at first. I thought it, would be a flying pig. So I went to my assistant at the time and I said, find out who makes that and how do we get one and what does it cost? And it turns out that there are airship companies, and they, the way the airships work is that you rent them, you paint them. I mean, Budweiser had its logos, and, MetLife had theirs, and Goodyear has theirs, and you can paint whatever you want. I thought it was going to be a pig, but Gilmore thought that was an old image. He wanted something new. The Division Bell album was about communication. I got on the phone with Storm Thorgerson, who's their graphic designer.
Legend.
I spent a lot of time in the book. I want people to know Storm. I want to know what he did. I want them to understand how he worked. Because when you read about these album covers, how they're created, it's mind-blowing to read about how he does this stuff, right? So this is not computer generated. These album covers are works of art that he photographed. And he designed a psychedelic airship with a bunch of faces facing each other and flames. And I mean, this thing looked like a creature of its own when it flew. Like if you looked at it, you didn't even register as a blimp right away. It registered as like something from Jules Verne. It's like Robar the Conqueror. Like, what the hell is that thing flying in the sky? And it was gorgeous. There's a great color picture of it in the book. You can find it on YouTube. I mean, there's a video on YouTube of a little documentary about it. You'll read in the book about how I had to talk the president into it because it was a lot of money. But it became such an event because it could float from city to city. A giant airship, psychedelic, Pink Floyd. Even if you didn't look up and see it, I put rock stations in the gondola and they broadcast live from the Pink Floyd Airship. So you could be in, Chicago. Hey, this is Lynn Bremer from XRT. I'm broadcasting live from the Pink Floyd Airship, and we're going to be flying by the Sears Tower in about 30 minutes if you want to wave to us as we fly by. We gave rides to fans, would land, and you could win a ride in the Pink Floyd Airship from your local record store. And when you got in, you got a Sony Walkman. You heard the new album, The Division Bell. The thing takes off. You're in heaven. The band loved it because they'd all become pilots and they wanted to log time in an airship, which I thought was fascinating. It was so huge because it got so much coverage, not only newspapers, not only radio, but television.
And TV.
Yeah, TV, because the traffic helicopters would be doing a traffic report. Oh, here's the so-and-so highway, but, it's having trouble. But that's not, the story today. This is. And then the camera swings around. They're flying right next to this 200-foot giant psychedelic flying machine that says Pink Floyd on it. And the guy at the television station go, what the heck is that? All of a sudden, they're talking about Pink Floyd.
They've been rocking stadiums and concert halls for the past 3 decades with a blend of heavy rock and spectacular shows. The elaborately designed stage, patterned after their new Division Bell album that debuts next week, has been in the works at JRS since last week. And that's not all. Their North American 38-city tour is being promoted by the world's largest airship. We took a ride in their splashy 200-foot-long hand-painted blimp and got a sneak peek at the completed stage at Joe Robbie Stadium.
It was bigger than I knew it would be big. I didn't know it would be that. It was so successful that when the band went back to England, they built one over there, a little bit of a smaller version, and they made it into a fish. I don't know why, but Storm wanted a fish, so I had a fish flying machine.
That's awesome.
But it was very Floydian. It's big, it's psychedelic, it floats. It was miraculous.